Okay, so it's been a while since I've done a video, and as we all know, the most recent shooting at Isla Vista occurred a few weeks ago, and part of me decided against doing a video about Elliot Rodger because I knew it would be sort of a bandwagon scenario for many YouTubers, but I finally broke down and decided to do something about it. A lot of people are asking why Elliot Rodger did what he did. There's been a lot of sort of excuses as to why. I had a friend who posted an article on Facebook where someone blamed Xanax for Elliot's crime, saying that the antidepressant, I believe it's an antidepressant, ultimately drove Elliot to kill, which is bullshit. We all know that's bullshit. A lot of people are saying it's because of porn and this male-driven society that brainwashed Elliot into thinking he can kill women whenever he wants. Again, that's bullshit. The one thing that was made painfully obvious to me when reading Elliot's manifesto, I did read it, all 140 pages, was his narcissism. Elliot is and was a raging narcissist. And I have a couple articles pulled up here. The first one is, what is the difference between selfishness and narcissism? We as human beings tend to be selfish. That's just how we are. We have selfish thoughts. Even the most generous of us think selfishly from time to time. But when does that cross over into narcissism? Narcissism becomes unhealthy, or selfishness becomes unhealthy and turns into narcissism when it is at the expense of others and there appears to be no remorse towards using or hurting others to get your wants and needs met. Of course, those of you that have read the manifesto or have watched Elliot Rodger's YouTube videos will see that he was without empathy, without remorse, and was a narcissist in the best sense. Number one, I'm using my tablet by the way, has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as a superior without any true achievements. Elliot Rodger repeatedly refers to himself as a supreme gentleman and is insulted that women don't pay attention to him. This is obvious in his manifesto. There are numerous times where he refers to himself as the supreme gentleman. Women should flock to him because he has what they need. As the manifesto goes on, you can kind of watch his mentality, his mind sort of slip further into delusion. He actually considers himself a god at one point, stating that he has a right to choose life and death, that they've made him suffer. But all of this stems from his idea that he is the most important being on the face of this planet, which again is obvious if you've read the manifesto or if you've seen any of the YouTube videos. Number two, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Now, Rodger was obsessed with finding love. He was also obsessed with wealth. There were numerous times when he would talk about how his mother should marry a rich man because it would make his life good. He spent a lot of money on trying to win the lottery. It would have become extremely depressed if he couldn't win the lottery. But he often felt his fantasies were wrapped up mostly in the ideals of love. As stated in his manifesto, I want to feel that sense of being worthy. He idealized a relationship with a beautiful blonde white girl. A virgin who had never held a girl's hand, he fantasized about what other people's love lives were like, but had a shallow understanding of love. He was baffled that girls didn't swoon over his $300 sunglasses and BMW. Rodger explains that once you hit puberty, life is either heaven on earth or a living hell. According to him, whether or not his life was good depended on how many girls liked him. By bashing his life's worth on whether girls liked him, he made women into objects instrumental for feeling self-worth, rather than as people in themselves. This also points towards Elliot Rodger's misogyny. Now, I am not a Tumblr feminist. I don't even consider myself really a feminist. And I rolled my eyes with everyone else when Kill All Men was trending on Twitter. But this article, the fact that he made women into objects by using them as sort of an instrument for his self-worth, just points towards how misogynistic he really was. Misogynistic, that's a word, right? Sounds like one. Number 3, believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high-status people. By seeing himself as inherently unable to be loved by women, he thought of himself as special. I've been thinking about how sad and miserable my life has been. I have had to rot in loneliness. Now, Elliot saw himself as special because he considered himself a true gentleman. He also, in terms of wealth, Elliot lived a very lavish lifestyle, had a very privileged childhood, had plenty of nannies that took care of him, went to all of these different countries, flew first class every time, pretty much every time. He lived a very privileged lifestyle. So not only did he consider himself special because he couldn't magically get women to like him, but anything that he considered to be low class or not decadent enough for him, he would turn his nose up at. So he only wanted to associate with high status people in high class and this decadent lifestyle he imagined himself in, which again traces back to number 2 with him being preoccupied with the fantasy of having power and wealth. Number 4, requires excessive admiration. It is not clear by what Rodger says that he ever actually interacted with women. It wasn't a very well-written sentence. He doesn't describe approaching women to strike up a conversation, but he is clearly mad that women don't pay attention to him. He sees women with other men and feels they are insulting him personally. Now that I noticed in his manifesto is that Elliot Rodgers, bitched and complained about how, oh, I can't get women to like me, but he would never attempt to talk to any women. He would never attempt, he would never attempt to talk to them, strike up a conversation with them. He simply just expected them to read his mind, because being the supreme gentleman that he was just so amazing that all women should just flock to him. Number 5, has a very strong sense of entitlement. Unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Not only should girls love him for his wealth and appearance, they should not insult him by being with other men or wearing revealing clothes. In Rodger's twisted mind, what women do is directly relevant to him, regardless of what's going on in other people's minds or lives. So he had a very strong sense of entitlement. He believed he was entitled to whatever woman he wanted, that if any woman ever dared to be with anyone but him, they were insulting him. Even women he didn't even know. Like, if my husband and I were walking down the street holding hands, and Elliot Rodgers was still alive and saw that, he would see it as I was insulting him because I was with my husband. This was Elliot's mentality. When reading his manifesto, there was one point where he stated he did not want to be friends with one certain child because there was nothing in it for him. There were 4 different occasions he wrote in his manifesto where he told the audience, the reader, that his mother should have married a rich man because he wanted a good life. And he told his mom himself, personally, that it is her job to make herself miserable for him. So he had no issue exploiting and using other people as a way to get attention, as a way to make himself feel better, and he showed no sympathy or remorse towards them after hurting them. Number 7, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Within the past year, Rodger committed several acts of aggression with no qualms about harming people. Now, the writer of this article goes on to talk about the things he committed. I'll just shorten it. He had splashed his latte on a couple for looking happy, and he did this a couple times. He did it to a man and a woman, and I believe he also splashed 2 women that were walking together. He found another couple that looked happy, and he was pissed about it. So he gets a water gun, fills it with orange juice, and splashes them. He also attempted to push a student off of a ledge at a party for not talking to him. Another thing that kind of falls into this category, as stated here, he published combative comments towards women and minorities, disrespecting those people's humanness. Now, it's already obvious he's a misogynist, but he also had some pretty nasty things to say about minorities, which I find funny because he himself was of mixed race. His mother was Malaysian, his father was British. But he had a roommate at one time, a black man, who was talking about how he had sex with a girl when he was 13. And Elliot went on to talk about how I am of British aristocracy, and this man is, descendant of slaves. He doesn't deserve a white woman. You get my point. Number 8, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. Perhaps what untimely destroyed Rodger was his maddening envy of others. While looking at a sunset in one video, he says he cannot enjoy it because he's thinking of all the men they get to enjoy it with girlfriends. He feeds his loneliness and hatred by comparing his experiences and his ideal vision of love. In a video with envy in the title, he films a couple kissing in a park as he broods in his car. Just reading the manifesto, he was extremely envious of others. That was painfully obvious. And finally on the list, number 9. Regularly shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. In a video he took of himself in his car, he, without joking, gives what he thinks is a sexy look and films himself driving. In isolation, it could be an embarrassing moment of self-absorption, but Rodger makes numerous comments online that shows he was full of himself. I do everything I can to appear attractive to you, Rodger explains in his video titled, Why Do Girls Hate Me So Much? So, and that's pretty much how it ends. It ends on a weird note. The writer does put here towards the end, Dear all Elliot Rodgers out there, the goal is not to manipulate people into liking you. The goal is to be authentically likable. Now, before I continue, I will say that I mourn Elliot's death as I mourn the death of his victims, because Elliot was a tortured soul, and there is no joy in his death, especially since he took others with him. I mourn him because of his parents. I mourn that his parents did everything in their power to save him. I mourn for his father, for his mother, for his siblings, for anyone that was affected by him, and for him in general, because he himself, as I said, was a tortured soul. And there's no joy in the death of a tortured soul because he was in pain up until the very end. So, while my Facebook post I posted on it, I called him a narcissistic, spoiled little shit. And I said that out of anger. But I do mourn his death, as I mourn the deaths of those he took with him. But ultimately, I have to say that I believe, now I'm not saying this is true 100%, it's just my opinion, that Elliot's narcissism truly was his undoing. That he was so narcissistic and so self-absorbed that he spun into sort of a delusion and developed this sort of God complex, that he was the ultimate gentleman and all women should flock to him. And I think that drove him to kill. I know a lot of people say, oh, porn did this, or male-dominated society did this. If you honestly are going to sit there and say, I know 100% why, you're full of shit. I'm going to take from the Amazing Atheist's book here and just say, take a page from his book and say, you have a secret agenda if you're saying you know what caused it. Porn did this. No, you just are trying to discredit porn. This male-driven society did this. No, you're just a raging feminist. So, oh, and speaking of feminists, count on them to make a national tragedy all about them. All these people die because of this young man, and they're bitching about how the world's out to get us, kill all men. Trend that on Twitter. Really? You're not mourning the loss of these people, you're talking about how the world's out to get you. Fantastic. Anyway, that's it for me. I really don't want to touch on this topic anymore, but I thought, you know what, I gotta talk about it. So, feel free to subscribe, comment, whatever. I have a URL to the articles I used below. I also have a URL to 2 videos from 2 different YouTubers who sort of have 2 contrasting views on this whole, hullabaloo, this massacre. One being a dose of Buckley, the other the Amazing Atheist. I suggest you check both of them out. Their views are kind of contrasting, but they both did an excellent job with their videos. So feel free to check them out. Please ignore my improper grammar. It's 3:30 in the morning. And I will see you guys next time.